Hello and welcome to You Okay Man, a weekly men's mental health discussion. I'm Elliot.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Tom.
And you okay, man? So, how are you doing, Tom?
I'm doing good. It's been a good week actually, compared to other weeks. Bit of context: I went through a breakup. 3 weeks ago now. 4 weeks ago.
No, it must be less than that.
No, it was on. No, it was right at the start of May.
It was like a few days before
4
her
weeks
birthday.
ago. Yeah, it was. No, it was. I think, 4 weeks ago. That's crazy. No, it's been this week's been a good week. I've kind of found myself again, got back into routine with stuff that I used to do. But no, it was tough. Like, it was real hard. I think the thing that hit me hard the most. It's all good terms. It's all happy stuff. It's not like it's a end of the road, I'm done sort of thing.
Yeah.
But no, it was just the thing that hit me hard the most was just because you have such a routine. I mean, Elliot and you both have it with your current girlfriends, is that you're so used to speaking to them every day. It's like, there's always going to be a text from them. There's always something that comes that's going to be from them that you can engage with. But the moment that goes, there's just this huge empty space in your life that now needs to be filled, and you're with something that you're so used to. Honestly, you like it a lot because it's a relationship. That's the sort of, obviously it's a reason why you're getting into it, and so you've now lost it and you've got to fill it with something else. And that's what I think that's what I struggle with the most, is just trying to find something that made me happy, but didn't remind me too much of it.
It can't be easy filling a hole like that, especially when we're in lockdown, when there's limited things that you can be doing.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like, the normal way people would get over these sort of things is to go out, do stuff. But when you can't go out and do stuff, like, what do you do? And that's something I had to deal with. And it was just, throwing myself into literally anything that came up in the house. I was like, empty dishwasher, I'll do it now, and I'll do it well. So it was just that. And then, it was surprising, like, not only the mental effect it had on me, but like the mental / physical side of things. Like, there was just no energy. Like, I really got into running over lockdown. Like I was saying last week, we were saying last week that running is really good because it just helps you focus on the then and now, like in the moment.
Yeah.
And it was just, before the breakup, it was fine. I could go out, smash out 5K, come back, and everything would be good. But, I tried it again, I think start of last week, and that was still like 3 weeks after things had stopped. And it was just, I had no mental drive, no motivation at all to do anything.
I think people forget that when you go through such an emotionally traumatic experience, such as a breakup, that mental effect actually then does impact you physically. The mind and the body are one thing. They're very much entwined. I don't know about you, Elliot, and I know obviously you've experienced this very recently, Tom. But when I was going through a previous breakup, I was completely distraught, done. Like, I wouldn't even get out of bed. Like, I had no energy whatsoever. Exactly the same experience that you're having, Tom. So I can completely relate to that. And the fact that you have managed to, in these exceptionally difficult circumstances, given the lockdown and being inside, push through that. You're doing everything you possibly can in the circumstances, these incredibly difficult circumstances that you've been given. And you just, you need to be really proud of yourself for that, given we are locked down and there isn't much you can fill that, that gap with that you now have. So yeah, just pat yourself on the back, mate. Well done.
Oh,
Moving on.
No, thank you. No, I feel, no, obviously, thank you for saying that. That's very, very kind of you to say. No, I just felt it's always been that mindset where I've just got to pick myself up, move on, just put myself in my happy place and just keep myself busy and keep myself going from there. And that will eventually get me through to a spot where I feel good about myself again. And luckily, I've landed in that place.
So on that note then, Obviously you said like there's a tendency to, when you have a breakup, to kind of go out and distract yourself and something like that, rather than sort of address what has happened. Do you think that being in lockdown has forced you to confront how you're feeling in that situation, rather than a bit better than perhaps going out and distracting yourself would be?
Yeah, no, definitely though. I think when you don't have the ability to go out and distract yourself, you're definitely forced to, like you said, just to sit down and confront, like, just what happened. Basically, that's probably as broad as you could put it. But the thing is with the split, it wasn't. I mean, obviously, I can't put words in other people's mouths, but it wasn't like a thing did wrong. It wasn't like this happened and that's it. It was just like a slow. Things weren't being easy anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy to sustain it, so it was just easier to stop than try and carry it on.
And
think,
when you're apart as well, like things aren't easy when you're at a distance. Simply put.
Yeah, no, like we were saying last week, like everything's been done over text, and a text is never a full message. So it's hard to really sustain what's going on. But these things happen, and it was the better choice than try and force something that was, in hindsight, very hard to keep going.
Yeah. The last breakup I went through was probably about I guess 2.5 years ago now. But it was just before I went on my gap year, and I broken up with my girl. I broke up with my girlfriend. Well, we broke up. It was mutual. It was probably about a year, just over a year. And it was difficult because like there wasn't any one thing that was wrong. You know what I mean? Like no one cheated on each other. We didn't have a huge argument, a huge fight. It was just kind of it was where I was mentally. I was really, really dissociated at the time, and so I kind of wasn't present. And she'd just gone off to uni, and I was about to leave for Canada, and it was just like a bad time, and everything was at the wrong place, wrong time, and the relationship had kind of reached a stagnant point, and we both kind of knew that it had to end, and it wasn't the right place, but it still fucking sucked.
Yeah,
it's like there's nothing you can be angry at.
No.
And I remember for me, I spent about 24 hours, 48 hours in bed just doing nothing, just feeling sorry for myself. And after that, I was like, right, I should be done then. Like I've had my time, feeling sorry for myself. Got to get up, get on now. You're better than that. And I left for Canada about a week after we broke up. And then I was meeting new people, and I was going out and distracting myself and whatever. And it wasn't until like I came back from Canada that I actually had time to address the relationship. And that was 9 months after we broke up that I actually came to terms with the nature of the relationship. And I think that
you put it on hold, essentially, didn't you?
Yeah.
You put it on hold,
And I think that tendency to try and distract yourself isn't healthy. And like, I think you've probably reached a really good place by being forced to confront it, even if it was difficult at the time.
I really want to.
It's not a nice thing to address.
I really want to commend your emotional maturity, though, because when I was your age and I was going through a similar process with a breakup, I was all over the shop, and like I was unable to contain my emotions. I was in a very bad place. So yeah, well, just very much well done for being incredibly emotionally mature and stable about it.
Yeah,
and there'll be bad times.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, with Elliot said it perfectly there. Like, there's nothing to be angry about, and that doesn't make it harder in a sense, but it just makes it just feel like
you can't direct one emotion at one spot.
Yeah, there's nothing to point a finger at, and you can't be like, this is the reason, this is it. It's just a very. It's when you're like a kid and you say, this is a very adult thing. It's just something you have to let go of, and it'll all be okay.
But there's still things you can learn from this, right? And there's still things that you've learned about communication and stuff like that, right? And expressing yourself as well.
Yeah, no, it's just about. I mean, these things aren't linked to to why things stopped, but it's just like, especially going through like the breakup and aftermath. It's just I found it very important to be honest with yourself and be honest with what you're feeling, whether it you know, whether it's hard for you to hear personally or for someone else to hear, but it's just always important to get out what you're feeling and just to be able to understand what you're feeling, because it's very easy to have all these emotions inside you and be overwhelmed by it, but understanding it and coming to terms with it is important as well.
And so,
yeah.
No, you
Oh, yeah. I was going to finish one final thing. It was just like, what Jake was saying was like, yeah, I mean, it hasn't been easy. There have been very tough times, and you know, I haven't been the easiest person to deal with about it. So, but it's just about like slowly coming to terms with it and understanding why.
And you're doing a fantastic job doing that, mate. Just pat yourself on the back.
Thank you.
And that's what I was going to say. Is it's really difficult to come to terms with things by yourself, because when you talk to yourself, when you think about things on your own, you're stuck with your own internal logic.
Yeah.
And you can say things in your head that actually, if you were to say them out loud, sound absolutely ridiculous, right? And you know, for example, in the relationship that I was in, I was like, the only reason that we broke up was because of my dissociation, and it was my mental health problems that was the only reason why we broke up. And obviously, saying that out loud, that's totally unreasonable. Yeah. And so often a large part of getting over a breakup is talking about it with people and having someone to bounce those ideas off. And obviously in lockdown, it's really hard to do that, because you're either calling someone and that you feel like there's a barrier, or you're texting someone, and that's even more of a barrier.
Yeah.
You know?
And you don't want to feel like a burden as well. And that's the other bit.
Exactly. No, especially with the way talking about mental health is it's one, talking about it hard, and then two, feeling like a burden. It's and you should.
And I want to put this out there. Never a burden.
You're never a burden.
And it's so difficult, because like literally last night I was I mean I'll talk about this in a minute, but like last night I was there being like, I don't want to be a burden to Jenny with what's going on, realizing that this was pretty much the exact same situation we were in 6 months ago, but in reverse, where I was literally like, you know, of course you're not a burden. I don't, like, you're my girlfriend. I want to help you.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's just difficult when you're in that state to realize that you're not a burden.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, you know, how are you feeling now then?
Oh, well, yeah, I want to say fine, but not fine. I mean, someone I was talking to, a friend, you know, was saying that it's like you've got like a ball bouncing around the room, and occasionally it's going to hit, and there's like a small box in there or something, and when the ball occasionally hits the box, you know, all the emotions will come up again. But the box is getting smaller and the ball's getting smaller. But yeah, no, I'd say I'm in a good place now, though.
Good. And like, it's absolutely okay to find yourself in a bad place again.
Oh,
it's just important to know that the way to get through that is by talking about it, because that internalized logic can get you really trapped in that room, right? Like, it can make that room smaller, and you're going to hit that square more often.
It's the fact that it's the fact you've acknowledged all of this. Like I said before, the emotional maturity of this whole situation, Tom, is going to get you through it. So
no, I mean, I've had my very immature moments, and I've had my mature moments, but it's all a learning curve, really. And
exactly,
we come out a stronger person. But no, I've had my dad here, and bless him, I've not. I've been a bit of a mess around him sometimes, but
that's what family are for, though.
Yeah, exactly. But we're good. We good. That's all I had to say. I got a lot out there. I spoke for a while, actually. That was quite nice.
Good. All right, Jake, do you want to go next, or do you want me to jump in?
You go next.
Okay. So last week I was struggling, like really physically feeling fatigued, and that was meaning that I had to confront a lot of the kind of mental things that I'd been ignoring for a while. And I don't know whether that's made me worse or better this week. So this week I felt much less fatigued, but much more anxious, if that makes sense. So I found myself really jittery in the evenings, and I went from, so last week probably having, I think I had about 1 or 2 panic attacks, and then this week I've been having about one every day. And so like it's been getting quite bad, and I've never had like proper hyperventilating stars, feeling like I'm going to die panic attacks before. Normally when I get a huge increase in anxiety, I'll just get irritable or jittery or whatever. But yeah, these last couple of weeks I've been having proper panic attacks. And that's been something that I've really, yeah, that's been something that I've been struggling to come to terms with, because that's a very, very physical display of my own mental health, if that makes sense. Like, because I think when it's internalized, I can tell myself that I'm doing better, and I can tell myself that I'm aware of how I'm feeling and stuff. But yeah, a panic attack, there's something really raw and vulnerable about a panic attack.
It's like everything boils over.
Yeah.
And you can't, well, I mean, obviously, but you can't control what you're outputting to the world, essentially. And that to me was always the horrible part about panic attacks. Obviously, the feeling of them, but then like you mentioned, the vulnerability of it all, you not being able to control that.
And so I'm living with my girlfriend, and we're in this little studio thing that you can see, all the listeners can't. But and so it would normally be in the evenings, and I don't know whether it's a symptom of anxiety or something else, but I've been struggling to breathe as well. Like, I felt like there's been something blocking my throat right at just before it splits into the lungs. And so often when I'm struggling to breathe or I'm coughing, then that kind of triggers me feeling like I need to breathe harder, and then it kind of escalates up into a full-scale panic attack. And when it happens, I just, like, the absolute worst thing is, so when I hope she's okay with me saying this, but when she has a panic attack, it's very much she wants to be reassured, and like I stroke her and talk to her and make sure that she knows that I'm there. But when I started having them, I just wanted to get out, and I just wanted nothing. I didn't want her to see me like that. I didn't want, and so, like, it felt to her like every time I was getting bad, she needed to tense up and make sure she wasn't anywhere near me, because when my vision was closing up, I'd just be like, I just need to get out, get away. And I'd just go outside and sit down. And it wasn't until last night that I realized that, one, it's not a good way of dealing with it, because whilst for me it felt like I could deal with it by myself, I was still having panic attacks, right? I was still getting worse, and they were still going on for longer. And it wasn't until last night that I was talking through it with her that I sort of came to the realization that the reason I don't like her, so she tried to, like, talk me down. So she tried to, like, distract me by being like, oh, I read this story today. This is really interesting. Or, whatever. And I'd just be like, just stop talking to me. I don't need this. And it wasn't until last night that I realized that it's because I wanted to prove that I could do it myself.
Yeah.
Which is so insane when you say it out loud. But my internalized logic was, I'm too smart for this. Like, I know I'm having a panic attack. And even though I feel like I'm dying, I know I'm having a panic attack.
Yeah.
I know I'm not going to die, so I don't need anyone else. I can sit here by myself and get through this myself, because I'm too smart for anxiety.
Yeah.
And that's just so insane. It's like such insane internal logic.
I think that's quite and if you don't mind using a buzzword.
Sorry, guys, give me a second.
That's okay.
It's quite a toxic masculine thing.
Yeah.
That we are. It's been boiled down into us that we're sort of expected to be able to deal with things on our own. And I'm speaking purely from a male experience here, and I'm sure you can both relate. But we're not expected to, fall back on other people.
Yeah.
Or at least internally, we're not. When you've got a big group of friends that you can trust, then perhaps it's different. But even then, when you're at your most vulnerable and you know yourself best, it's incredibly, incredibly hard to, even to the closest people around you, to be able to give a little bit or some, or even open to that experience. And when you're in your most vulnerable state, as you describe, in a panic attack, it's not unruly or bizarre, given how society has cradled us, to suspect that you would be that way. So that doesn't make it necessarily a good thing, and you've acknowledged that as well, which is a start of things, to moving on. And so what did you do next, Elliot, essentially, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, well, so I just kind of spoke to Jenny, and I was like I'm aware, and that was it. I came to the realization that that was a thought process of toxic masculinity. That's something which has been conditioned into me by society, and that I need to get over. And she kind of explained to me this really interesting thing, in that when something happens and you have your gut reaction, that's so often when something happens and I have a gut reaction, and then I feel guilty for having that gut reaction, if that makes sense, right? So in this example, I have a panic attack and I'm like, I'm too smart for this. And then I'm like, that's dumb. Like, why do I think I'm better than that? And I end up berating myself for it. But she explained it to me like this, is that your gut reaction to things is the way that society has conditioned you. But your recognition, so your second thought, that's the way that defines who you are. And that defines who you are, because that is your conscious brain that's telling you how to react to those societal conditioning that you've already received. And she explained that it was to do with cognitive behavioral therapy, and that recognizing those automatic responses that you have and kind of combating them slowly. So it's not, it's not a bad thing that my instinct is that toxic response, but acknowledging that it's toxic is good. But
yeah,
which you have done.
But it took me a week of being shitty to admit to that.
And these things, like, they're not, I mean, the solutions to them don't come about immediately, which is the tough thing. Like it's really good to go through a process like you have done, to have these experiences, try something, and then acknowledge that it's probably not the best thing to do, and try a different way that hopefully does more for you. But like you were saying about the initial reaction, like I get that completely. Like, trying to figure things out for yourself and trying to do things for yourself and give yourself your own comfort is a big thing, and it's very easy. And it's something, I've never had like a full-blown panic attack on that scale like you've described, but in previous times when I've been overwhelmed or have felt panicky before, I've always wanted to give myself my own reassurance. Like, I've always felt that if I can't do it for myself, then how am I meant to do anything?
Yeah. So, and it's such an unreasonable response to think, and it's so like arrogant as well to think that you're too smart for mental illness. It's like going, no, I've not got the cold, I'm too strong for that.
My immune system is just best.
Would you argue that it's somewhat disbelief, in a sense, that
I was definitely aware that I was having a panic attack.
Yeah.
And I've definitely been aware of that, but absolutely, my mental thought process is that I'm like, I know that it's happening, but I'm too smart to let it affect me or whatever. And that was, what I had to come to terms with. And like, that's also been just a staple of my mental health in general. Like I didn't want to acknowledge that. So I was very much aware from the age of about 17 or 18 that I was experiencing disassociation. So feeling that I was very, like, almost drunk all of the time. And sometimes I'd black out and I'd just appear in places and not know how I got there. But for the first 2 or 3 years, I refused to acknowledge that it was anything mental. And I was very insistent that it had to be a physical thing wrong with me. So I had blood tests and MRI scans and sleep scans and trying to work out what was physically wrong with me, but nothing was physically wrong with me. And it's most likely triggered by something that I don't know yet. I've not.
I mean, that in itself, though, if you don't want me pulling to this point, is it proves that mental health care in this country is still not yet up to scratch. Because if it was, they would have acknowledged that was where you were at, and the fact that they were testing for things physical. And almost ignoring the mental characteristics of your behavior. I think there's a long way to go. And I mean, there are several campaigners that would agree with that. But the fact that you've got there on your own, I mean, it both is a good thing, but proves the point that I just made.
Yeah. And like, I'm sure a part of it was my insistence on different physical symptoms and stuff like that. But yeah, it was, I can't remember the point I was making, but I wanted to insist that it was physical because that meant that it wasn't mental, because I was too smart for it to be mental, which is, again, insane in its logic, because you know, I have been for a lot of my friends, like I throughout a lot of my later teen years, I talked a lot of friends through their own mental health struggles, whether, you know, depression or anxiety or OCD and stuff like that. And I considered myself so open with my mental health because of that. You know, I was like, I've seen the full spectrum of what mental illness can do to people, or mental health problems can do to people. And so I need to be so on it just so that I know if I'm ever going there. But at the same time, my brain was going, no, but you're also too smart for mental health, which again is insane, because I did not believe that the people who, you know, were suffering from depression were in any way dumb. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
But
completely.
it's like my brain held myself to different standards than I held my friends to.
Well, it's almost, is that denial though, in a way?
Possibly.
Yeah.
But I think it relates to that idea of feeling like a burden, in the idea that absolutely any of my friends can talk. I mean, even any of my acquaintances can talk to me about their mental health, because I think that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
But I would never go to anyone else about my mental health. And it's that double standard that is in my head that I need to acknowledge and slowly overcome. But I think that's a symptom of it, is holding myself to a different account to what I hold other people to.
Yeah, and just one, talking to someone else about it is tough, but two, like, it's also a scary thing, like talking about these things that you can't, one, physicalize in front of you, and that, like you said, the doctors haven't physicalized that. Like, how do you go about talking about that? How do you go about how do you go about
scary,
dealing with that,
isn't
as a
it?
person?
It's a scary situation to be in.
You feel very vulnerable in front of other people. But yeah, it's a difficult thing, and it's a scary thing. That's exactly it, because you feel like you're putting your soul out there and your vulnerabilities out there. And I think that's just another thing which we as a society need to come to terms with, is that being open about your mental health doesn't make you vulnerable. It just makes you honest. And the more discussions I have with people, the more I realize that everyone goes through it at some point, to some degree. Everyone experiences it, but just because we don't openly talk about it, it feels like we're the exception and we're the vulnerable one, and we would be the burden and no one would understand us. And it's a vicious cycle, in that no one explains it because everyone feels vulnerable, and
it's not normalized, is it? If mental health was normalized, and don't get me wrong, we are getting to a point where it's getting better, but we've got miles and miles and miles to go. If it was normalized, I don't think people would be in this situation as often as they find themselves in now. We're still, as a society, only just coming to terms with opening up about our own internal problems or internal struggles, and the fact that us three as a group of friends, and I hope that the people listening are hearing this, and if you're struggling and you haven't opened up yet, please open up to a friend if and when you can, because that's what we want to do. We want to try and promote that, because that's what needs to happen in society. And Elliot, you doing that now, even just to your girlfriend, something that you couldn't even do with her previously, and you've now started to do after acknowledging your behavior, that's a fantastic thing. And you've done that all off your own back, so you should be proud of yourself.
Thank you. I just as a final note on that, I have felt like I've always been quite open with Jenny, as my girlfriend, about my mental health, but I think it's something that I've always considered goes hand in hand, like being vulnerable with my mental health with my partner, because they're my partner and I can trust them. And that in itself is, again, it's a symptom of toxic masculinity, in that men tend to feel like they can only be emotionally vulnerable with their significant other.
Yeah.
And it branches off into two things, in that men often have smaller support networks, because I don't feel like I can build a support network out of my friends, because I don't feel like I can be emotionally vulnerable with them. And obviously a part of this is me trying to normalize that support network, right? But on top of that, then you get the on a minor note, it's that, you know, that outrage of being friend zoned. I read a really interesting piece which was talking about how the fact that the reason why guys see the friend zone as anything. So the reason why a guy is in a situation with a girl where the girl perceives him as a friend and the guy perceives her as more than a friend, the reason why that's so outrageous to a guy is because often it's a situation where the guy has been emotionally vulnerable with the girl, and the girl perceives that as just a normal part of friendship. And that's why the girl perceives it as a friendship. But the guy associates emotional vulnerability with romantic partners and emotional partners and stuff like that. And so the guy has got a totally different perception of this relationship, and then feels outraged because he's like, well, I've put my emotional vulnerability out there because they see it as vulnerable. How come that's not being replicated? And then you get this anger in response, which again, it's toxic. It's not something which should be normalized. And I hope it's something that we're coming to terms with.
That definitely makes sense, because, you know, for me personally, I've never been one to open up about what I feel like on the inside. I've always been someone just to keep it in and try and deal with myself until it gets too much. And then I think, okay, this is when I need to speak to someone about it. But just saying that, just with friends, like, I've never even really considered saying, this is how I feel, because my friends are who I have fun with. My friends are people I smile with. So bringing a frown, bringing sadness to that table just doesn't seem to click. And then, you know, when I was with my ex, you know, that's the only time I really felt like there was someone other than my family who I could actually open up with it about. So, you know, that's interesting to hear that there's an actual, like, writing about it. Because that's really something that you feel but don't really address.
Because that can also be a reason why addressing the emotional nature of a breakup can be difficult for men. Because if you've lost that person who you would be emotionally open with, you then no longer have anyone but yourself who you can be open with. And then you're stuck in that twisted internal logic that's irrational.
Exactly. And it's just like it's a complete internal battle, because it's like, you know, I was able to get all these problems out to someone who I trust, but now that's not there. And you try and go back, but you can't. And that's one of the many battles that you face as well.
But yeah, so
you don't have to deal with those battles on your own, though, and that's something.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And that's
something that you should be aware of now.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to put out. You can talk to anyone.
Yeah. Exactly.
So how's your week been then, Jake?
Oh, Christ. I personally have been getting better at the things we discussed last week. So I've been more open. I've been talking. With my girlfriend, I've been getting my emotions sort of out there and how I've been feeling. This week, as you'll be aware, I'm surprised I haven't even mentioned this yet, but it was International Mental Health Week. And there's a lot of fantastic things going on to help people during this time. And in my job, we were doing a mental health hour every week. And as I mentioned last week, I'm on the phone, so I take the phone calls for these mental health hours. Now, obviously, I can't go into detail about specifics and who said what and all of that. But as you can imagine, when you're actively asking for people who are in a bad situation to call in to a radio station, you're going to inevitably get people that are going to call in that are in a bad place.
Yeah.
And I spoke to so many people earlier this week, who were not in a good place. And I mean, I tried my absolute hardest to help them, and some of them I did put on air, so they could speak to the various experts that we had on, counsellors, psychiatrists, etc. We had 4 different guests throughout the week. We tried to stick to 4 different topics, but it was, for the whole, it was general mental health. But there's only so much you can do. But then, and I think I touched on this last week, it's that impact of hearing all of those negative stories and hearing all of people being in a bad position and hearing, people on the brink, the impact of that on me, because I'm the only person taking those phone calls and I'm the only person hearing the behind the scenes bit, has been horrendous this week. I mean, it's got to the point where I love my job. I adore it. And I'm so fortunate to be in a position where I work in radio. But I didn't want to go in multiple points this week because I was just so anxious, terrified to take phone calls. I didn't want to hear somebody on the brink. I didn't, because I was afraid that I didn't know what to do, because ultimately the only thing I can do in that scenario is point them to help that they need. I can only signpost. That's the only ability that I have. And knowing that you could be, they might not accept that help. It's just so much emotional burden on me. And I just got to the point where I didn't want to go in. I was terrified. I was anxious of doing the job that I love. And so there were points this week where I just said, and I haven't missed a day, bearing in mind, since I started working there 4 months ago, that I was just thinking I need to just message my manager and say, no, I just can't do this. But I didn't. I stuck with it, and I think sticking with it was probably the right thing to do in terms of the fact that I have this other thing where I hate missing things. Like when I'm working, and I mean, you two both know me, that I'm very much, when I get into something, I'm either 100% or 0%. I throw myself into it. So in that sense, that's sort of satisfied that element of me. But I think in the long term, I'm definitely going to see a counsellor when this is all over and done with about all of this, I think. Because I think the other side of what we're talking about is that when you're somebody who is detached from things, so let's say you're on the end of a phone line and you're talking to somebody who you don't know, and you're capable of detaching yourself from that situation and not associating care with another human being, I think you're far more capable of being able to sit in that situation and deal with those calls. I can't do that. I cannot detach. I care, and it's the one thing I suppose you can't really do in that situation. But then, how do I not care as a human about somebody who's also a human who's in a bad position? That's where I go, well, what I leave work. What if I didn't help them? What if I didn't give them the right advice? What if they're gonna do something that might harm themselves now? What if a bad thing happens as a result of what I said? Why didn't they follow my advice? I tried to give them all the advice I could, and it's just all of those frustrations and emotions, and that's still bombarding around my head. Like in my free time, I just sit down and I think about all of those calls that I've taken over the past week, and how I'm just like, did I do this right?
No, I think that the fact that you stuck with it, I mean, firstly, huge fair play for that, sticking with it and going into work and keep on doing what you're doing it's so well is amazing thing to do, firstly. So fair play for that. But I think, you said you're a very caring person, and it's hard to detach yourself. Sorry, but you got to recognize it's not your job to take the responsibility of these people. I mean, I'm not sure if that sounds harsh or not, but it's the job of the counsellors and the experts that you're putting them through to. That's what they're coming for. The fact that these people are addressing that they are in a bad place and want help from it, that's the first step, and that's the step you're part of. You're not part of the step of finding the solution. You're part of the step of finding them help, which is what you're doing.
It's more when, so there are scenarios where I can't put people through onto the air because it would be wholly irresponsible to do so.
Mm.
Scenarios where they need urgent help there and
Mm.
then. They don't need to go onto a radio program. And it's in those scenarios where they refuse the signposting and they just want to talk to you and they expect you to know the answer to their problems.
Yeah, and it's difficult as well because
what do you do in that scenario? And
yeah,
I'm not qualified to be able to give medical advice or mental health advice. I can give my experience. I can give what I think, but that is a whole minefield in itself where I shouldn't be doing that.
Like is your your responsibility as producer isn't to talk them through, it's to
Assistant producer.
assistant producer.
Not quite yet.
It isn't your role as assistant producer to talk them through that, but I think there absolutely is a tendency, like just as on a human level, hearing someone in trouble and feeling like I've got to help them, and absolutely we should be trying to help everyone that we should be coming into contact with. But I think you need to understand that in that situation, all you can do is signpost, and it's something that I've been trying to put together in my head since you've been talking about it. Because on one hand, it's difficult because I feel like you should have been given some kind of training on how to kind of deal in these situations, because it's a very different situation to what your normal job is, I assume. And you're kind of being bombarded with, I don't know how many people, and you don't need to disclose that, but I'm sure it's quite a lot of people you are perceiving to be in stress.
Per show,
yeah.
Somebody who's in crisis, I would say we get at least 3.
Right. So there you are. So
in the course of an hour.
Over the course of an hour, you're coming into contact with 3 people who are in crisis, and you, Jake Willis, don't have mental health first aid training. You have to judge whether they are in what needs to happen with them, and then they go and they're gone and they're out of your lives, and you don't get that closure, and you don't get a knowledge of whether they're okay or not.
It's detaching. It's essentially detaching yourself,
and that's the difficult part.
Which is something that I am yet to be able to do, because again, I care too much about people and human beings who are in need of help, which is so counterintuitive, because that feeling is a good feeling, but when you're not, I guess, qualified to deal with people in that situation, it's also a bad thing, because if you were then attempt to sort the situation out, you could be making it worse, couldn't you?
Yeah. Because I think, especially if you're someone who's used to talking to their friends about their problems, right? And if you're used to being there for friends and that not being a problem normally, right? And because you're happy to talk to your friends, and that's never normally a problem. And you can talk people through things, and you can signpost, and that has more weight coming from a friend than from a random assistant producer.
Completely, yeah.
But then you're in this situation where you're applying the same amount of investment into people who, you know what I mean? Like, you're not the best person to help them, but that's really difficult if you're the only person they want to talk to. And I feel like this is one of the times when we, as 3 men with no training in mental health whatsoever, might be reaching the edge of our boundary.
We're completely reaching the edge of our boundary, because
we're not professionals.
we're not professionals, no.
But like, in terms of your situation, I think absolutely making sure that you have a network of people outside of work that you feel comfortable talking to about this means that you can feel like you can unload little bits on people without feeling like, hey, here's the 6 people I thought were in crisis today. It's you can unload little bits and receive that support that I think you probably need at a difficult time like this.
Yeah, and like I said, after all of this, I don't think I'm at that stage yet where I need it. There will come a stage where I do, almost certainly.
Too smart for it, are you?
No, I don't personally feel that.
Yeah,
I just think that I'm at a point where, because I'm not locked down as we've described previously, and I'm still going into work, that I have a respite, in a sense, that I'm able to move around still. I'm able to do other things that allow me to not think about that. But when I get free time to think, that's when I start thinking about all of the dark stuff that I have heard. And I think, if I were locked down,
no, you're good.
like right now, and sort of in a situation perhaps like you two, I think then I would 100% need it, because I would start thinking about it all the time. But I'm lucky in the sense that currently I've got things to think about otherwise.
As a counter to that, though, doesn't it sound like you're saying, I'm okay, I don't need to deal with it now because I'm able to distract myself?
Yeah, it completely does. Yeah.
Because then all that's happening is it's just building up, and when you finally need to release, it's going to be a lot more than if you were releasing little bit by bit. And the way I visualize it, and this doesn't always help with every, like, it's not a catch-all metaphor, but
no.
The way I visualize my mental health sometimes is it's like a glass of water, and with each thing, like, yeah, there you go. With
I've got
each
one right here
little bit, with each daily stress or worry or whatever, it fills up a little bit more, and eventually it gets to the top, and you can keep ignoring it, but once it gets to the top, all it takes is a tiny drop for it to overflow.
Yeah.
And so it can be the tiniest thing, like I can't find my phone, and that can be the thing that pushes me over the edge. But if you're aware that water's coming in slowly, if you can just open that tap at the bottom every now and again and let go of some of it to someone else and help talk through it.
Well, that's
even
what
if
this
you
does,
feel like you're not even halfway full, it's gonna future proof. It's gonna protect you from the future when you perhaps you physically don't have the time to open that tap.
So one of the great things about doing this podcast is that I know we're doing it for everybody. We want to raise awareness of men who are in difficult situations, and they should talk about that. But it's also good for me, for you, for Tom, for all of us, because we are getting things off of our chest. And I think that's probably another thing. I mean, I know it's not professional help. I know it's not probably what I need. Maybe I'm going to need. What I'm definitely going to get after all of this is over and done with. But for the time being, I think this is somewhat allowing, as you described, Elliot, some of that water to be released. I'm coping. I'm very much coping. This week rather was tough, and I heard a lot of stuff that I'm obviously not going to disclose, but I wouldn't have wanted any of you to hear or go through. But at the same time, I think I dealt with it quite well in the situation, and even though all of the doom and gloom that it has had an effect on me, I do look back and take pride in the way that I handled dealing with those phone calls, and I gave them as much advice as I can, and the ones that I couldn't help or didn't listen to me, they exist, and that is the source of sort of most of my upset with this. But I helped people, I know that, and that I take pride with.
No, the fact that you've got the confidence in yourself to know that you're offering some sort of help and that you're dealing with it well that's really good to have, because I know you as a person, and I know you would deal with this sort of thing in the best possible way. You know the way to go about this sort of thing. So you're doing well, is what I'm saying, basically. Long-winded way of saying it. I think definitely if it is becoming too much, then it's definitely worth talking to people where you work about it to get, because it's unfair to like you said, not feel afraid of going in. It's unfair to have that burden.
And I've got to say, like, my work have provided us, I guess, resources. They've given us free Headspace memberships, which is quite nice, and I've been utilizing that app. It's quite it allows me to detach from the world and just relax for a second, or 30 minutes, whatever, which is very nice. So there is things being done to help us. It's not like we are completely on our own, and I've got a fantastic set of colleagues around me who are also very supportive as well. So when it comes to the working environment, there is a level of support there that has helped me. But I do this every week. We have a mental health hour every week. It was just this week with the 4 of them that we had, and the fact that we had just a vast more amount of callers than we perhaps would have had normally. That's why it was tough. And yeah, I'll definitely see a counsellor at the end of this. And for the time being, this is helping. Yeah,
just know for the time being, we're here. Like, you don't feel like you have to keep it all holed up just so you can say it all on a podcast at the end of the week, because we are here throughout the week.
No, don't worry. I have been also, as we described last week, I have been opening more up to my girlfriend about these issues. I'm keeping. I mentioned this last week again. I'm keeping sort of the worst of it, the sort of the stuff that I don't think I need to mention out of that, so the stuff I hear, because I don't think I need to spread that negativity. But what I am feeling, I've been opening up far more than perhaps I had done previously.
Yeah, and just releasing a little bit, like Elliot said with the water analogy, just releasing a little bit now and then can do wonders, and just being able to feel like you can get it out and to someone else other than yourself is it's really.
I think that might be our top tip of the day.
Yes.
Yeah. Get it out slowly.
Get it out. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, awesome. Thank you so much again for sharing, guys. Again, I feel like we've covered some really, really important topics of breakups and going through that not alone. Feeling like you're absolutely not too smart for mental health. Trying to make sure that you are not waiting until it's all too much to release. Like, I think it's important to not feel like it has to be bad enough for you to let people know how you're feeling. But thank you so much for joining me, guys, and thank you again to all of you at home who are listening. If you do have any feedback or anything like that, please do let us know. But I was really pleased with everyone. Seemed very, very happy with our last one.
The response was great.
No, it was.
But thank you so much for joining me. I've been Elliot.
I've been Jake.
And I've been Tom.
Stay safe.
Stay alert. Damn, did I get it in?
Thanks for listening. Please remember that none of us are professionals, and if you do need help, please seek professional advice from either your local GP or any of the established charities that I'll leave in the description. If you want to see what else we're up to, follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Jesting Dog Productions.